What's going on, everybody? In this blood-soaked episode, we're going to be talking about the crimes of Richard Ramirez, aka the Night Stalker, who terrorized Los Angeles from 1984 to 1989. So let's get right into it. A little bit of backstory about Richard is that he grew up in a similar way to many other serial killers, in that his father supposedly was an abusive man. His mother was supposedly a domineering, religious woman, very religious. And these are not the kind of people that Richard wanted to stay with or be associated with. Richard had gotten into Satanism. This was something that he found solace in. He was an avowed Satanist, and he started cozying up to his cousin Miguel, who by some accounts is the one who actually introduced him to Satanism. His cousin Miguel was a Vietnam War veteran who was an actual war criminal, and he used to tell Richard about his war crimes and even show him pictures of women that he had murdered after raping by beheading them. Miguel shot his wife one day in an argument in front of Richard in the face, killing her instantly. After Miguel was sent away, Richard started living with his older sister and her husband. Her husband wasn't a better role model at all. He was a peeping Tom who would take Richard along with him on his nightly escapades, and further giving him that sense of being a stalker, teaching him even more. So this is the upbringing that Richard had. Obviously, these are things that he learned and used later on when he started committing his murders, his heinous crimes. So Richard grew up in Texas, and he worked in a Holiday Inn. He used to use his access key to get into people's rooms and steal their belongings and burglarize. On one occasion, there was a woman in the room when he entered, and he proceeded to try to rape her. Her husband did come in time, saw the whole thing. He caught Richard red-handed, and he beat him mercilessly. Richard did go to trial for this, but nothing came out of it because the couple didn't live in the area and didn't want to go back and forth for the court proceedings. So he pretty much got away with it until he moved to Los Angeles and escalated his crimes. Now, the thing is, the first murder, I should say, that Richard committed in Los Angeles wasn't connected to Richard until many years later. It wasn't tied to him until many years later through DNA and forensics. It was the murder of a 9-year-old girl in the basement of a hotel that Richard was living in. He had raped and mutilated her body and left her in the basement of that hotel. This was in April of 1984. In June of 1984, Richard started using his stealth and evasion tactics, his stalking tactics that he had learned from years before, and he started breaking into homes. He broke into the home of a 79-year-old woman who was sleeping and found her in her sleep, stabbing her and slitting her throat, almost decapitating her. Shortly after that, Richard broke into another home where he finds a woman, and he shoots at her, but her keys deflected the bullet. Richard then shoots her roommate, who had heard the commotion. She came out to investigate. She's killed on the spot. He then leaves, and he carjacks another woman and kills her. This is all within the span of about an hour. About 10 days later, he breaks into another home where he finds a man asleep and shoots him 3 times in his sleep. He ties up his wife, and he demands to know where the valuables are. As he's searching the house, she breaks free, and she attempts to kill Richard by getting her husband's shotgun. She points it at him. She pulls the trigger, but unbeknownst to her, and unluckily for her, the gun was not loaded. Richard saw this, and he shot the woman, killing her and mutilating her body. He cut out her eyes, put them in a jewelry box, and took them with him. A 16-year-old victim of Richard that he had, whose home he had broken into, he beat her with a tire iron. When he tried to stab her but couldn't find a knife, he instead chose to strangle her to death using an electrical cord. The cord sparked. This scared Richard, and he said later on that he believed that this was divine intervention from Jesus. This 16-year-old did survive, but not without 500 stitches due to the severity of the beating that she took from the tire iron. Richard eventually started getting a little sloppy with his work, and police were onto him. One of the things that they knew was that he had a unique sneaker. They found footprints in some of his crime scenes, and supposedly this sneaker that he had was like very rare in the area. So they started tracing it to him. But Dianne Feinstein, who was mayor of San Francisco at the time, let it out on national TV. When Richard heard about this, he obviously knew that they were onto him because of the shoes, and he threw them off the Golden Gate Bridge. Needless to say, this didn't sit well with the police department, who was furious that she had given out this crucial information that got them so close to him. He took a few days off from this because he knew they were onto him, but he couldn't resist the urge to kill again. He broke into another home where he found a man sleeping and shot him 3 times. He found his wife there, who he bound and beat, and as he was looking for valuables in the house, he made her swear her allegiance to Satan. This was something that Richard would do. He would make victims swear allegiance to Satan, or swear on Satan that they didn't have anything else for him to take. After he made her swear allegiance to Satan, he then raped her. But this would be the final nail in the coffin for Richard, because after this, a 13-year-old neighbor heard the commotion and looked out the window. He saw Richard trying to get away in a car he had stolen, and he got some of the plate number. He gave that plate to authorities, and they were able to trace down that car. Now, Richard usually never left prints around. He was more careful about it, but at this time, he did leave one print that they were able to tie to him. And this would be the print and the call that led to his downfall. Soon after that, police knew they had a suspect. They knew who it was. They had pictures of him from previous arrests. And now that things were all adding up and connecting to Richard. His face was plastered on newspapers. He didn't know it at the time because he was out of town visiting his brother. But when he came back and he was in a grocery store, he actually saw his face on the newspaper. And then, kind of like a scene from a movie, he hears people talking about him. He hears women in the grocery store saying, "That's the killer." He sees other people looking at him, and now everybody's eyes are on him. He tries to flee, and a crowd chases him through the neighborhood. He's trying to carjack people, but to no avail. The crowd chases him down. They beat him badly, and he waits there for police, who then take him in. At Richard's first trial, he made again known that he was an avowed Satanist. He stood up and yelled with a pentagram drawn on his palm, "Hail Satan." Richard enjoyed celebrity status throughout his trial, with one woman going so far as even marrying Richard while he was on death row. At his sentencing, when he was sentenced to the gas chamber, to die in the gas chamber, Richard only said, "Big deal. That always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland." Richard never did see the gas chamber. He died at the age of 53 in 2013 to B-cell lymphoma. So that's going to be it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do leave a like. Please subscribe. I appreciate it. It does help me out, and I need it. And I'll see you in the next one. I'll be bringing you more of these grisly stories.